All right, everyone. Hi, welcome, and thank you for joining. My name is Shamira Foster. I am with the Aurora African American Health Coalition. And today, joining us, we have licensed clinical psychologist Dr. Adrienne Skinner. Today, Dr. Skinner will be talking about rest and maternal health. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, we ask that you save them and just drop them in the group chat or in the Q&A section, and we will answer them towards at the end of the webinar. Dr. Skinner, you may begin.
Thank you so much, Shamira. And actually, today we're talking about the getting the conversation started. I'm gonna just share my screen, so excuse me real quick. Share this. Okay. Go into view here. Okay. Here we go. Slideshow. So today, actually, we are talking about getting the conversation started. A clinician's guide to culturally competent care for Black and African American women. So hold on, let me do presenter view. Okay. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Clearly, I am not somebody that knows how to I'm fumbling around a little bit. So please forgive me while I get this together. There we go. Okay. So, as I was saying, today's topic is getting the conversation started, a clinician's guide to culturally competent care for Black and African American women. Excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold, so I apologize for the froggy voice. Um, like Shamira said, that I am a licensed clinical psychologist. I am also a certified clinical trauma professional. And what that does is that gives me a little more training and insight and into dealing with or approaching different various issues from a more inclusive, more strength based, more resilience based approach versus pathologizing um, the mental health issues that come into my office. So we're going to get started. I also want to just say, give everybody who was able to make it here today a big round of applause. I know that it's really hard to take time out of our schedule to do some of these things, to take care of ourselves and to take care of our practices and to really just sit and just be present with ourselves and do what we need to do to help move our professional development along. So yay for you guys. Again, round of applause. So I want to just start with settling in, kind of pulling ourselves into whatever space you're in. I'm here at work, so I'm going to pull myself too into this space and be present and engaged in this moment. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead and just take some time to breathe deeply. For those of you that know how to do the deep belly breath, to do that. For those of us that may not be able to or don't know, it's just being able to just kind of calm things down on the inside, this internal universe that we all have. I would like you to take some time to prepare your mind and heart to focus on what matters most. If you are comfortable and if it's available to you, to go ahead and close your eyes or just soften your gaze, maybe focus on a point on the floor if that's what makes you comfortable. And I'm going to provide a little bit of a segue into what we're going to be coming in or going into for this next 45 minutes or so. And I'm going to read a poem by John O'Donohue called For the Traveler, because I feel like the journey that what we do as a profession, it's a journey. It's an adventure that has its ups and its downs. And if we can look at ourselves as a traveler versus being the one that is just here, it gives us more grace to enter into these areas and these topics. Okay. Every time you leave home, another road takes you into a world you were never in. New strangers on the other paths await. New places that have never seen you will startle a little at your entry. Old places that you know well will pretend nothing changed since your last visit. When you travel, you find yourself alone in a different way, more attentive now to the self you bring along, your more subtle eye watching you abroad, and how what meets you touches that part of the heart that lies low at home. How you unexpectedly attune to the timbre in some voice, opening a conversation you want to take in to where your longing has pressed hard enough inward on some unsaid dark to create a crystal of insight you could not have known you needed to illuminate your way. When you travel, a new silence goes with you, and if you listen, you will hear what your heart would love to say. A journey can become a sacred thing. Make sure before you go to take the time to bless your going forth, to free your heart of ballast so that the compass of your soul might direct you toward the territories of spirit, where you will discover more of your hidden life and the urgencies that deserve to claim you. May you travel in an awakened way, gathered wisely into your inner ground, that you may not waste the invitations which wait along the way to transform you. May you travel safely, arrive refreshed, and alive your time away to its fullest, and live your time away to its fullest. Return home more enriched and free to balance the gift of the days which call you. And so I ask you to just sit for a few more moments and just take in what, resonated with you in that poem and to realize that our time together would really like for it to not be a time of shame or judgment, but really one of curiosity and compassion. Because this is a really needed area of focus and and interest. So when you're ready, go ahead and open and kind of bring your eyes and bring yourself back into the presence of what we're doing right now. Okay. So what I'm gonna minimize this. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. When the speaker go into for the I'm gonna go back to okay. So when I was preparing this, when I was asked to do this talk, I came to it with a lot of excitement and a lot of trepidation, um, because I wasn't really sure if I was going to find information that was going to, well, if I was going to just find information at all, because I went to school, geez, over 20 years ago, and there were just little snippets here and there of multicultural um, counseling practices and things of that sort. And it wasn't as, and a little bit here about identity development. And there wasn't any talk about really racial stress and trauma, racism. And if there was, it was something that was maybe a seminar. So it was a credit class, one credit class, and it wasn't something that was part of the mainstream teaching, part of the curriculum, I should say. It wasn't required. And so now as time has gone on, it's like, wow, there is this whole breadth of information in this population of which I belong that I knew nothing about, even though this is my embodied life, this is my experience. And so it was excitement. And then I'm like, oh, yay, I get to learn more about myself and how like all the things that I experience and things of that sort, and then to also be able to turn around and to give it either to the people that I have the honor to serve or my other colleagues. So when I'm starting to do some of these talks, I look to kind of as an anchor to have some quotes. So these are some of the quotes that I have come across to be able to again to kind of anchor some of what we're talking about today. The first one is from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it says, of all the forms of iniquity, injustice in healthcare is the most shocking and inhumane. The second one is from Dr. Tamar Bryant, and she was our former APA president. I believe it was maybe 3 years ago. Hers is justice is healing, justice is therapeutic. The last one was from President Barack Obama, and it says, Ensuring access to quality, affordable healthcare helps create the opportunity for all citizens to achieve the American dream. Despite advances in medicine and technology, disparities remain in our healthcare system for too many Americans, including racial and ethnic minorities. And when I started to, again, when I was gathering the information to find out, just again, because I've been out of school for so long, what for the clinicians that have come behind me, what was their experience and an exposure to, again, any of the racial and ethnic minority um, the different things that are present, some of the embodied lived experiences and the multicultural teaching. And I got a lot of like this. There was a lot of like, wow, we didn't really get it. And now, as clinicians that are licensed or even not fully licensed, they're looking to get outside training. So, in the continuing eds or readings or things of that sort. So, I'm hoping that this is one of those tools or resources that can go, that can help to fulfill some of that gap in knowledge. So, here's another quote that really delineates what we're some of the basis of what we're talking about, and that this what we're talking about is grounded in data, and it's not just anecdotal, it's not just something that's far reaching. It's like these are what's happening are things that have been studied and is really part of the literature that's really burgeoning now, and that is important. um so this says progress is rarely linear and change can be uncomfortable. By staying grounded in our shared values and lifting each other up, we will not only persevere but grow stronger. The issues we champion are human issues, and in the belief that all people deserve the opportunity to thrive, we bring scientific knowledge and a deep understanding of human experience to the table. This is a quote by Arthur C. Evans, Dr. Evans, and he's the APA, the American Psychological Association CEO and executive president, and current president, Dr. Deborah Kawahara. And like I said, they are present day. Okay. So these are objectives. And in my head, I like to really call them aspirations because I feel like they're things that we continue to strive for and that we may hopefully never fully achieve. Um, because it's such a vast and wonderful area of study, an area of just knowledge that there's just too much. So I say objectives, they're in my head, I call them aspirations. So, what I aspire to today is to help clinicians build culturally affirming psychotherapeutic rapport for Black and African American women, to fill in the gap of knowledge that some of us did not get in graduate school, to help clinicians develop, increase, and maintain competencies and the capacities to improve services to the public and enhance contributions to our profession, and to also build confidence when providing psychotherapy to Black and African American women. And I'm not really sure the different from which parts of mental health we have represented today. Um, so my goal is to, even though I may say, and it may slip where I say psychologist, because that is my identified profession. I really want it to be to be more inclusive, to include the wonderful work of our social workers, the wonderful work of our LCPCs. If we have like NPs, I'm not sure of the yeah, I know we have some psychologists that have signed up for today. So again, I look at us as just being in this field, just coming at it from different perspectives. So here are a few loose ends that I literally had no idea where to put them. So here we go. They're all on this slide. Um, to first and foremost, like I said, that this is a pretty expansive, the breadth and the depth of being culturally competent. It's vast. We'll never be fully, um, you may be more proficient, but we'll never be fully, we won't hit the, but we'll never hit the ceiling because there's too much. And it's amazing that we get that gift. So this presentation is not an exhaustive guide to competent care for treating Black and African American women. The other part that I want to make sure that I say with that part is that this isn't a one size fit all. And we'll talk a little bit more about the being that sitting in with the population and learning to listen to their lived experience is just being able to do that, their lived experience, and then applying the treatment to and the modalities and interventions and things of that sort to what that specific individual's lived experience is. This is an attempt to pique your curiosity, to seek resources, additional training, and engage in compassionate conversations with other clinicians. And a really cool thing about that is not only one way to increase our cultural competency is to not only read articles or literature or take trainings from those that look like us, but to also do it from take them or read them trainings from other clinicians or providers that are different than us in any of the aspects of culture that we considered, um that to hear information from other viewpoints. That's also an amazing gift that we get to have, especially when we have a digital platform such as this, that we get access to quick trainings where we can do it in the comfort of our home or office or things of that sort. The other part is just kind of as a something for us to go ahead and hold in our head, in our brain as we're doing this, is that we all have an implicit bias. That we bring that into our room as clinicians, we bring that into the room. We may even bring that into our documentation. We may bring that into how we discuss the folks that we serve with our other when we're getting training or consultation or supervision, and to recognize that that is just part of us as human beings as well, and to recognize that that may come up in our sessions or training or things of that sort, um, and to go ahead and to seek some consultation and supervision around that, so that way we can go continue to grow more as the clinician, but also it's a way to make sure that we are able to hear and to be with the people that's sitting across from us. This goes along with what I was just saying, is to strive for like excellent, not perfection. At one point or another, a cultural offense will happen. Give yourself grace, recognize it. And acknowledge that. That was, I'm sorry for that. Please forgive me and whatever that might mean. And then you work to repair the rupture, and and have that could even be part of um the therapeutic space, is being able to talk through some of what pops up, because that could be part of that the Black or African American woman's experience, is that somebody may have offended, but it was dismissed or minimized and just had to keep moving forward. And lastly, that this is not a one and done opportunity to learn about cultural competency and how to be a culturally competent clinician. That this is, again, just an opportunity to just drop in the bucket, and that hopefully you'll go on and want to get more and seek those opportunities out. All right, so what does this mean? What does cultural competency mean? When you look at the literature, it is a benchmark for effective, ethical, equitable, inclusive, and affirmative psychotherapeutic care for Black and African American women. And what it also includes is this ability to honor and respect the beliefs, languages, interpersonal styles, and behaviors of individuals and families receiving services. It also includes, as well as the staff member, whoever it is that's providing it, um, to be respectful not only of your own culture, but also of the individual or individuals that you are serving. It includes having the possession of the skills and knowledge that are appropriate for and specific to a given culture. And if you don't know what that culture is, letting that be part of the intake process, like, and how does the person or the family, and it could even be if you're serving a family, how does each person within within the family or that person identify themselves? Because that could also really be an issue, and like they may identify themselves as one way, but the society at large may see them in a different way. And that is something that is also part of the lived experience, that that's important. This involves a specialized knowledge, the technical skills and attitudes about diverse groups, and receive the care from a clinician who respects and tries to understand their culture. And as we go through, in those stages, those early stages of learning, and then we're on our practicum and internship, and if you are a psychologist, the post grad or excuse me, postdoc, we're always talking about rapport. And we think that that's inherent in that, right? Like if you can establish a good relationship, that automatically is respect and trust. Um, but that is not always what's just because that might be the intent, it may not be the way that it is received or perceived. And it behooves us as the clinician, but also as the person that's receiving the services to really come to an understanding of what it means for them to live within their identified culture. So taking this a little bit further, as I said, we are all coming from different perspectives. Again, just informal training, LCPCs or LPCs, LCSWs or LSWs, psychologists or pre-doc people. As a community of mental health clinicians, we can make it our aim to promote health and well being by challenging negative racial and ethnic biases that perpetuate oppression in practice settings, systems, and methods. And depending on people's exposure to what's been happening somewhat in the literature, there is this awakening, I'll call it, where there is a look at some of how interventions have been developed and implemented, theories have been developed and implemented that are not adaptive to what's happening with the lived experience of somebody, which is part of why we have some of these trainings that are necessary because we want to be able to serve the people the best that we can, that we have the privilege of serving. Okay. So being culturally competent includes humility. What does this mean? And these are adapted from a training that I attended from Dr. Chinwe Williams, and it was on racial generational trauma. It was a webinar that I took. And so having cultural humility involves entering a relationship with a client with the intention of honoring their beliefs, customs, and values. Embodying or coming from that place of being a culturally humble therapist, you adopt an interpersonal stance of curiosity. They being the clinician, have an ongoing process of self exploration, self critique, and a willingness to learn from others. And that's some of what I was talking about with coming in and being compassionate, even coming into this training of bringing compassion and curiosity and putting the judgment to the side, is that if this is a new area, that's great. If it's not, but you're like, I thought I knew, but I don't know, that's awesome. If you're somebody that's like, well, I know about this, maybe you don't. And if you have some information, maybe you can share that, right? And it's being open to this process of learning and wanting to take on, like, wow, I get to be, and that's the cool thing about this field is we get to continuously learn. That's the nerd girl in me coming out, is that I get to continue to learn and get and be better. Now, I will say this part, not only am I a provider, as I am also a consumer of mental health services. And I've been on the receiving end of just this kind of care. And I will tell you that it is to be able to walk in with my psychologist and for her, and she's um a non-person of color, and to receive that unconditional positive regard of like, oh my gosh, and the curiosity, and not coming across like as if she knows everything about all that is happening in my life, and she just sits and she listens and she asks questions. And if she and even if there's a mistake, that like it's okay because we have that trust, and she spent a lot of time building up that trust and rapport and understanding that just because we are both identify as female, we both went to the same doctoral program, we're both female, oh, I said that, identified females, we both work in the same community, that I am and I identify as a Black African American just because of some of my ethnicity, that I'm going to have a very, very different experience than she does as a non person of color, or a non Black African American woman. and there's this sense of just feeling seen and heard. And that has helped me then to turn around, not only just as a person, right? But to turn around and say, okay, wait a minute. To bring that again, to know what that feels like to be on the receiving end, that I want to go ahead and carry that part forward again with the people that sit across from me in my therapeutic space. Okay. So I talked about this a little bit about why is this so important? And in particular, why is this so important for Black and African American women? And I will talk about in part two why there is that separate Black slash African American um, identification, because they don't necessarily always mean the same thing. But out of the interest of time, I didn't have a whole lot of time to, so I'm just putting there is a difference and there's a reason why I'm including both of them, but that's for part two. Okay. So this is a quote from, and I realized I didn't put this up here, from the Surgeon General. It was the first mental health report from the Surgeon General, and I think that was back in the late 90s. And that David Thatcher was the Surgeon General at that time. And it says, America draws strength from its cultural diversity. Diversity has made our nation a more vibrant and open society, ablaze in ideas, perspectives, and innovations. But the full potential of our diverse multicultural society cannot be realized until all Americans, including racial and ethnic minorities, gain access to quality health care that meets their needs. A major finding of this supplement is that racial and ethnic minorities bear a greater burden from unmet mental health needs and thus suffer a greater loss to their overall health and productivity. And so part of this speaks to the truth that mental health is part of overall medical health. It really is a mind-body connection, not just a separate mind and not just a separate body, but it's a free-flowing system that impacts both. And so when you are meeting one and addressing one, then you also need to address the other and vice versa. Okay. So the other part too, that I did not include in this, oh, I did. I never mind. I did do it. So to continue further with why is it important? As our workplaces, communities, schools, neighborhoods, relationships become more diverse, we're going to interact more frequently with others whose lived experiences are different from ours. Our professional bubbles are expanding. So there used to be a point in time where we'd say, oh, we're only going to see this population and do this intervention, or and just have it be nice and neat. Neat. It's not neat. It's never been neat, but it's like just like this. Well, as as things continue to change and evolve and develop and we become more rich in our diversity, those interventions or those ways of thinking, those mindsets, they change, or they need to change. And because we can't always control, or we don't always have say in who's going to walk in our doors. And even if they go ahead and they start saying, they identify themselves on the intake as um one part, because maybe their choices aren't, one box. When they come in and they start talking about their story, we want to be able to take in that history and the richness and fullness of that, and be able to meet them where they're at, and still have a sense of, again, humility and curiosity. But if we don't know what to listen for, then it could very well go past us as if it was nothing. Okay. So there was a study that was conducted by the APA, the American Psychological Association, in 2018, 2019, and it found that 4% of psychologists in the U.S. health workforce were Black. This goes into the next little box that I have, and it is highly likely that Black and African American women will find themselves receiving services from non-Black African American providers. Therefore, it is essential that culturally competent clinicians be prepared to meet this need. It is a supply and demand. If I could even, and I did not study economics, but I've lived long enough to understand this a little bit. There is such a high demand, but not enough supply of people, that of providers that can meet the need. And so it again, it helps to move us as a community along, to have us all be have this sort of mindset, this approach, this ingrained and integrated into how we engage with our people, have it be part of that. As I said, so as I'm saying here, cultural competency helps equip clinicians with some of the best tools to decrease race-based health disparities. And so that speaks to the supply and demand, but also that the lack of informal training and formal education, there was not this um, focus on including cultural identity, multiculturalism, and even racism. And again, that'll go into part two. That is I think in the end of May, how that affects Black African American by people of color, but also how it affects white and Caucasian people. And that there's also this huge gap between, as a person of color, wanting to receive and needing to receive quality care, and it being available and even access to, and even if you have access to, is it an inherent right that this person is going to receive it? Um, so this improves the quality of care due to lack of appropriate formal training we may have received when we were in graduate school, and that's a repeat. This also helps to decrease premature termination by creating a space where Black and African American women can feel heard and not judged. Again, as I was saying before about my experience, to be able to go in and to talk about some of the burden, or and even to realize that actually it was a bit of a burden that I was carrying, and not just this idea that I have to keep trucking on. Like, wow, and to say that without feeling like that was going to be weaponized, that and you feel heard and seen, it helps. It really just can help be add to that sense of understanding and transformation. That is what therapy is about. So it cultivates trust by helping clinicians understand the multiple contexts and intersectional identities of Black and African American women. And some of them are gendered racism, weathering, Black fatigue, the religious and spiritual coping skills that can come along with this population, and the strong Black woman persona. Um, and so I'm going to give just some real quick definitions as to what each of these, or just like snippets as to what each of these mean. And again, we'll go more into this a little bit more into part two of the series. So gendered racism is this intersection of oppressed identity of being a Black woman and or excuse me, of being Black and experiencing racism while simultaneously being female. So it's that kind of that double whammy of being Black and experiencing what it is to be a Black person on the receiving end of oppression, and also while experiencing what it means to be a female, and being oppressed from that perspective. Now, weathering, that is and some people have heard it as Black don't crack. And that is the idea that we as Black women may not have wrinkles, we may not look as old as we may say, but really what is happening is that on the inside, um, the biological aging of Black and African American women experience as a result of stress due to racism, sexism, poverty, and other stressors, that we actually are aging faster on the inside than what is happening on the outside. And this is an area of study that Dr. Arlene Geronimus did in a study in 2010. And she's out of the University of Michigan, and she's, I think, a behavioral research scientist, but I know she's out of U of M. Um, Black fatigue, that is a term that was coined by Mary Frances Winters, and maybe not term, but coined, but she uses this term to describe how racism disintegrates Black and African American women's internal universe, the mind, body, and spirit, which then impacts their internal function in the world. And then the last thing is the strong Black woman persona. Historically, that we are taught that to handle as Black women, to handle everything with composure and poise. And if you can't, there's something that is inherently wrong with that woman. And again, I'll go into more of that as we if in part two. So this also is important. Cultural competency is also important because it encourages a sense of positive well-being and viewing their characters, and that being Black and African American women, their characters as a strength and virtues versus weaknesses when compared to more of the pathologizing lenses that we have been taught. Okay. Ah, so here we are. That was really quick. And we're going to close today, and I think we're going to have some time for question and answers. But I wanted to go ahead and again say thank you so much for being here and giving your time today. I'm going to close with one more reading. We started off today being called a traveler, and now I'm also hoping that as we continue to go forth throughout our day and our week and what have you, that we can also recognize we are guides to the people that we serve, and that our therapeutic spaces, whatever configuration that looks like, can also be a cocoon. So this is a prose written by Courtney Peppernell, and it's called Time Will Tell. If you look beyond the horizon, far past the light and all the things burning bright, you will find an ancient kingdom filled with rolling clouds and sun showers and all the earth's wondrous wisdom. Within this kingdom live guides as far as the eye can see, and they hold a most important role of bringing us back to whom we knew ourselves to be. One day, a soul fell from the stars, crashing through mountains and rough seas. It landed in the deepest part of a familiar forest filled with tall evergreen trees. The soul had been lost long ago, a broken thing that the world had forgotten, a fragile heart, invisible and no longer seen. This particular day, the struggle of the soul was unbearable, a weight that forced all light into the shadows. An endless darkness ensued, one that felt singular, as though nobody else understood and nobody else cared to know. The soul was you, and this is the story of many things, of reflection and repair, of change and rebirth, of knowing that the greatest fight we face is our will to cling to this life on earth. Out of the shadows, a guide appeared with soft silk robes and a floral crown and eyes brighter than the sun. The guide said, "Huh, there you are. I've been looking for you, our little lost one." "I am broken," you replied through tears, "reduced to nothing more than ash and dust." The guide looked back at you sincerely and said, "But it is in these moments we must look within and fight with all we have to regain our trust." The guide reached for you and gently wrapped you, excuse me, I'm sorry, and gently wrapped you in a wrapped you tightly in a cocoon, hung you from the nearest branch, far from harm's reach, and whispered, "Believe me now, there are so many things that life can teach." "How," you asked, "can I choose to go on when life is so hard and the world is a little strange?" And the guide smiled soft and true, "Because I am here, and I will be there through your journey of change." And the guide smiled soft and true, because I so then I'm sorry. So within the cocoon, this safe space, you found a place to retreat and heal, to understand that all the ache is just another chance to feel. You began to reflect on your loss, learning that to start is to acknowledge the things deep within your heart. To survive is to open yourself up to repair, to understand that not all things in life are fair. But this doesn't diminish your worth, your spark, or your flair. And through all the learning and all the changing, you learned one of life's greatest lessons, one that could take some time to know to be true. You will always awaken as someone bolder, someone brighter, and someone new. But perhaps most importantly, this is the story of how you emerged more beautiful and stronger than the moment you fell. And as it happens, like all things in life, time will tell. So if we can go ahead and take away from this today that we are travelers as well as guides in this journey of learning to interact with people and engage and approach people and even ourselves in a way that is courageous and compassionate, I think that is a job well done. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Skinner. We do have a few questions, so I will start the first question. First question is, what topics will be covered in part two?
Aha! Okay. So the part two, we're gonna go on and talk a little bit more about what I said with the it's a framework for to um approach treating African American and Black or African American Black women. And again, it's just a framework, it's an approach, and it's one that includes um, it's from a trauma-informed, resilience-based, positive psychology, multicultural perspective. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the barriers to treatment that are presented from Black and African or presented to Black and African American women. We'll talk about those few things that I discussed, like the gendered racism, the strong Black woman persona, those things a little bit further. Again, time didn't really fully allow to go into that today.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, what are some missteps that clinicians make when working with Black women in therapy?
I would say making the assumption that you know that what their experience is, their lived experiences, and not even bringing the idea of or the reality of racism and oppression into the therapeutic space. Um, and when I say making the assumption that you know what that in particular individual is experiencing, because one Black woman's experience is not going to be the same as another for various reasons, but to really be able to approach it with, okay, this is an important part of who they are, and this is how they engage and interact with life. Let me take that into account. Um, I think the other part too is coming in and being like and thinking that you don't have anything to offer if you are of a different culture, race, ethnicity, or even gender for that. That's not always accurate.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
The next question is, what role does cultural humility play in building trust with clients?
So when I think of cultural humility, that is again coming at it from a place of patience with yourself, really a lot of compassion and curiosity, and wanting to get into here, wanting to come to into a place of excuse me, I want to hear this person's story. I want to understand. I want to listen to understand, not listen to speak. That's what I believe cultural humility. And then if you don't know, not being afraid to ask questions. Like I made that statement, black don't crack. Depending on if you've had that, some people understand what that means and have heard it and then can understand the context. Others don't. So ask the question, like, I'm not really I don't know what that means and all the nuances that go in that. Also, going out and again, like I was saying, having going and seeking out trainings and reading, really building up that internal, we all have all those books still left over from grad school. So adding to that library, that storage of knowledge, the wisdom.
All right, thank you. The next question, how can universities improve clinician training around cultural competency beyond a course or single workshop?
B. I think that that is one, I feel like that's a tiny bit out of my scope of like knowledge, just a tiny bit, just because I don't know a whole lot about education in terms of like training. I will say, as a clinician who went through that, it really would have been nice for it to have been woven in and not seen as, oh, it's an elective or it's separate. That again, culture and race and ethnicity, when we learn about the identity develop when we go through, because we all had to go through a developmental class, that that is actually woven into each part of that. When we are looking at when we and all of us had to take some sort of intervention class or classes, that that is part that's woven into, and that we really are taking looking at other sources of more recent sources of information that are coming from a decolonized and anti-racist and anti-oppressive standpoint, because that's really how that's how we learn. If we don't know what we don't know until we're told that. But if it's part of the regular in and out, like, we're not going to be like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's happening.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
The next question is, will you be sharing a list of resources or references from today and in the next session?
And yes, I did not include that in today's slideshow because that is totally my bad. I have it, but I did not include it in the slideshow, and that's my error. I will make sure that is in the next one. I don't know if the slides will be made available to people, Shamira.
We can get the resource list made available to
Okay, that's
you.
cool. That's cool. And so therefore you guys can um yeah, I am, again, like I said, I'm a nerd at heart, have always been a nerd. So if I can go ahead, and if this is just my own little way of being able to get the information out, pass the message along to the people, I am all down for that. So that is cool. If that's whatever, however I can meet that need, please. I'm
Okay,
up
good. Yeah,
for
so yeah, we'll get it out. Either we'll do a PDF and we can also get it put on our website
it.
for the next session.
Cool.
The next question is, for those of us that aren't mental health providers, how can we advocate for culturally competent care?
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that we had not. Oh, that's so neat. Well, I think even coming sweet. I think even coming to something like this today, that's how you start, right? And you turn around, and that's where I wanted to, without knowing that we had non-mental health clinicians in the audience. Yay. Um, being able to seek out, again, information that comes from a place of understanding and curiosity. um there will be a resource list, and it's not just clinical stuff that's on there, because I do believe that, we do, as clinicians, we may have one way of presenting things, but also I think for people that want to, like you were just asking, to how do I go ahead and take this out into the world, is being able to provide resources that are given to the non-clinical people. That will be part of it, but I think also being able to understand that not all lived experiences are all lived experiences, that there are some that are very specific, and ask questions. Don't be afraid to have conversation. Engage in those compassionate conversations. Take the time to listen, and then also hopefully be able to share some of your experiences as well. I hope that answered the question.
Okay, thank you. The
Mhm.
next question, can you list the four terms that were discussed in intersectional identities?
Yes, yes, yes. Okay. It was gendered racism, weathering, and that is the person that for that one is Arlene Geronimus, Geronimus. That is that's her as part of her research. Black fatigue and the strong black woman persona.
All
Oh, and
right,
then I also said religious and spirituality coping, but that's the fifth one.
thank you.
Mhm.
The next question, how can clinicians better address intersectionality of race, gender, and mental health in their practice?
So that's also, we're going to talk about that a little bit in part two. But I think being able to understand it's really hard to not to talk about these and not talk about the affiliated or the associated isms, to not address racism and the reality of that. It's really hard to not, you really do have to understand that that is a real thing, and that it exists, and that it continues to exist, if you're going to understand that there is this um the idea that women, identified females, and I didn't touch about upon this today, but it's something that I really want to continue to explore. Also, not only the cisgender but trans and the LGBTQ AI plus, not AI plus, LGBTQ plus community, that is its own, has its own intersectional um identity issues, for lack of a better word, not to pathologize it, but their own things that they deal with. So being able to take all these different parts and understand that there are some differences and standards that are that and disparities, we'll say it that way, and that there's oppression within gender and within race. And it's hard to not talk about the intersectionality without acknowledging that that is a reality.
Okay, thank you. And the last question is, do you believe all therapeutic modalities take race into consideration?
Present day? No, I don't. I don't. And again, that was part of some of the trepidation that I had when I was um working, and I was like, oh, for the love of everything, all of that education that I received, how much of this was not part of it, and that and again, I as a identified Black female, I really wish I would have known this because it would have helped that some of the stuff that I experience, it's not pathology. It is really a response and adaptation to some of my external experiences. And that would have really helped to for me in terms of my own understanding and my own acceptance. And I believe that that is part of what we can, again, therapy isn't about fixing, it's about transformation. And if we can go ahead and take all the different aspects of people into account, that we know and maybe that they know and maybe they don't fully understand, and figure out how they can have a better understanding of themselves so that they can approach the world in a different way. They can approach themselves, they can engage with others or not engage with others because we don't feel like we have to. That would be amazing. But I think it has to be one of those things, at least for right now, it's more like a grassroots, each of us can take on this charge, this commission, and carry it forward.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Skinner. Great webinar. Thank you everyone for joining. We invite you to join us again for a part 2 of Dr. Skinner's webinar, and it will be on May 22nd.
Mhm.
And also, as we all know, May is Mental Awareness Month. We also have another program that we launched called Man Alive. And if you know any men, we invite you all to join our Man Alive program. And it is about helping men with mental awareness and being able to have an open space to speak. I will drop that in our chat. So if you know anyone who may be interested, it is live in Champaign, and you can also do a virtual through our webinars. Thank you all for joining, and we will see